Hi guys, I'm Mike.
And I'm Stephen.
And this is F1 Fanatics. Welcome back to the channel. It is time for another Driver Rivalries. We are in the kind of break week between triple headers. And so obviously this is a time when we feel with our more kind of interesting content, I suppose, over next few days. Tomorrow we're going to have an interesting interview with Raz, F1 Worldwide on Saturday, F1 Legacies with Josh Revel on Ayrton Senna coming out on Sunday, and depending on certain race in Indy 500 might affect the next two races, next two videos for Monday and Tuesday of next week. But hopefully you guys are going to be looking forward to all our content. And a quick admin, we're going to be a bit more active on Instagram at the moment, so if you could go and drop us a follow on there at fanatics_F1_. I'll leave a link to it in the description, or you know, the tagline in the description down below. If you're new around here and you like our videos, you can subscribe to the channel and click that bell notification. Keep up to date with all our latest content, daily videos at 6 PM. We'll see how long that keeps going for. But yes, Driver Rivalries. You would have seen it by the thumbnail. We're back with a more modern one. We've looked at kind of some historic ones, or a modern and an older driver in terms of comparing. Now we're looking at two current guys on the grid. You know, a bit of a difference in terms of the time they've been within Formula One. Lance Stroll has been on there for 2 years longer. This will be his 4th season within Formula One. But we're going to do it. We're going to compare Lance Stroll versus Alexander Albon and ask who's better.
Ding, ding.
Ding, ding,
Fight.
Indeed.
Round one.
It's the stats.
Stats is round one.
Stats is round one. And it's going to be provided by Jonty again. So Jonty obviously has been providing the stats for our race previews, and he's also provided the stats for this Driver Rivalry. So thank you very much again for Jonty to do that. His obviously Twitter handle will be in the description down below, so make sure you check him out as well. But Stephen, who do you want to take? Alex Albon or Lance Stroll?
I'll take Lancey boy. I'll give you your favourite driver,
Of
Alex
course. So let's hear Lance's stats.
Lance Stroll, he's 21 years old. He was only 17 when he first entered F1. He was born in Canada, Montreal. He's had 68 races. His car number is 18. He's raced for Williams and Racing Point. He's got 1 podium to his name, and that was in Baku 2017. He's got 0 wins, 0 poles. Highest finish has been 3rd, which we mentioned was in Baku 2017. That was when he was at Williams. He's scored a total of 107 points, and his career highlights to date was 1st in the Italian F4 2014 Championship, and that was with Prema. He also won the Toyota Racing Series in 2015, and that was with M2 Competition. He won the European Formula 3 2016 Championship with Prema. In his rookie season, he finished 12th in the championship with Williams in F1, with the notable podium in Azerbaijan. And then in 2018, he finished 18th with Williams, the beginning of the end for them. Well, it's not the end, but the downhill section. And then in 2019, he finished 15th with Racing Point. But this year could be his all-time high, or it should be his all-time high.
Yeah, I agree with that. Obviously, he's in his best car, certainly, to date. Now, we look at Alexander Albon, and he is 24 years old. So, obviously, 3 years older than Lance Stroll. His nationality is Thai. He was born in London, though, and I think he's kind of Thai-British. He's lived his entire life in the UK, I'm pretty sure, but obviously has Thai heritage. He has 27 races to his name. His car number is 23. He's raced for Toro Rosso and Red Bull. He's got no podiums, and Jonty puts in brackets here, thanks to Lewis. 0 wins, 0 pole positions, and his highest finish is 4th currently, which he's had in Japan 2019 and Styria 2020. He's got 128 career points to date, and his highlights are the Eurocup Formula Renault 2.0 Championship, where he finished 3rd place, GP3 Series 2016 Championship, he was the runner-up, Formula 2 2018 Championship, he was 3rd, and in his first rookie season in Formula 1 in 2019, he finished 8th, racing obviously with half the season with Toro Rosso and replacing Pierre Gasly mid-season, going Red Bull. And a fun career highlight to date from John T for yelling "George" whilst playing online racing during lockdown periods, winning the F1 Rookie of the Year with a rap.
Bam.
So there are some stats about the drivers, just giving you a little bit more and just kind of noticing, especially with them both being young, most of their highlights have technically come in the junior careers to date. And it's an interesting one to look at. And now our comparison, obviously that was across their 5 years. And Lance obviously got that podium, well, 4 years. This is Lance's 4th in the season. But we're going to look at the last couple of seasons, because that's when they've both competed in F1, and we can have a better understanding probably of where we're like, and a fairer comparison, I think, as well. Yes. But so what we're going to look at their qualifying, their overtaking, defending, comparing them against their teammates, and also we are going to then round off with our conclusions with who we think is better, Lance or Alex Albon. So, Stephen, shall I get you started with Lance Stroll on qualifying?
Is this round 2?
Round 2.
Ding, ding.
Ding, ding.
Qualifying. Lance Stroll. If we pretend we're not in 2020, it's 2019, and we've only seen Lance for 3 years, shocking is his qualifying performance. He loved Q1. He loved it so much he never wanted to leave. Never wanted to leave that Q1. But since 2020, it's Q3 every time, hasn't it? Yes. He's qualified Q3 every time. Bam! What a turnaround. He is arguably in the 3rd best car on the grid, but Albon's in the 2nd best car on the grid, and we'll come on to his struggles. Lancey boy's putting in Q3 week in, week out now. Solid qualifying performance. So it's a bit of a weird one, because he was always a Sunday driver, but now he's actually converted those... he's actually converting Saturdays into solid performances, which is giving him better results and putting him in a great place in the championship. I think he's 5th overall at the moment. Yeah,
it certainly is in terms of that. And, you know, he's out-qualified Checo a few times as well. I suppose the only downside to the qualifying in 2020 was being out-qualified by Nico Hülkenberg in the 70th anniversary GP when Nico put it on P3.
No shame in that thing.
Nico is a good qualifier and does like Silverstone. But Alexander Albon's qualifying. Now, I would say Alexander Albon's qualifying is one of his weak suits. He isn't a very good driver on the Saturday. At the start, he was improving in his time in Toro Rosso against Daniel Kvyat, but Daniel Kvyat quite comfortably in the first half of the season was doing there. But he was getting better. And, you know, he was finding chances of beating Daniel Kvyat going later on into the, you know, second half of the first half of the season. Feels weird kind of splitting those two. But it was quite a dynamic there. Since coming to Red Bull, it was always going to be difficult. He's against an experienced teammate. But I didn't think it was necessarily too bad at the back end of 2019 season. He was at least consistently getting it into Q3, but then come fast forward into 2020, and he's had mixed fortune. Started off all right in terms of, you know, qualifying, then obviously went through his struggles after the contact in the first race of the season in Austria with Lewis Hamilton, And his confidence has taken a bit of a knock there, and that has been no more evident than on a Saturday performance. And yeah, being knocked out Q2 a few times and just being way off the pace of Max Verstappen. It is difficult because he is still, like I said, 27 races into his Formula 1 career. So he is still learning. But in that second seat, what we were talking about, 2019 was an awful season, and that was Lance's third season in Formula 1. So it's difficult there. But yeah, I think neither of them are particularly good. But as things currently stand, who would be the better qualifier? I'd say this one's probably won by Lance.
Yeah. Well, I think Lance has showed a big improvement in qualifying. He's qualified P4 and P4 how many times? 2? 3 times he's qualified P4? Sorry, I should have checked that before, but at least twice he's qualified. He's qualifying very well for himself. For where he's come from, he's improved quite a lot.
And beating Checo at times.
Yes.
So, although Checo not the strongest qualifiers, you've got to beat your teammate, which he wasn't doing the previous season.
Yeah. So yeah, give that to Lancey boy, Lance Stroll.
Now on to overtaking. And how would you go with the overtaking for Lance?
For Stroll, I think is an area he needs to work on. I think in races, he's very good at
the race start, I think, is a highlight.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. He's very good at overtaking at the start. He can launch off and fly forward. But there's been points this season he has got stuck behind people mid-race. That's affected his tyre management or whatnot. Thinking of the Styria Grand Prix where he got stuck behind Ricciardo, where Checo went flying past both of them and then ended up finishing ahead of both of them. And then also in the Silverstone Grand Prix, he got caught in the DRS train, which is quite tough to get out of, but he was still, I think he came across Daniel Ricciardo again on that one and got stuck behind him. He does get stuck mid-races, but yeah, like you said, his race starts is very good, and in very recent memory, you can look at the Spain where he jumped Checo and Bottas into turn 1 on the inside. Very clean, tidy. But his overtakes mid-race is a bit, it's not quite that easy. Yeah.
He relies on a better reaction off the starting grid from there. If we go on to Alex Albon, this is a difficult category, so I'm looking at his skill of overtaking. If I'm looking at his overtaking against competitors who he should be doing comparative to his car, it's not that great, or it's nothing to kind of shout out, especially when he's been in the top team. But that is, a bit harsh comparing a guy who's barely into his second season of Formula 1, and we're talking about world champions and prodigal talents, and there's biggest respect to Alex Albon. He's a talented driver, but he's not a Max Verstappen or a Charles Leclerc.
No.
So it's a little bit difficult when he goes into that category. But I would say, going back to obviously one of his early Toro Rosso days, he went from pit lane to points with starting in the pit lane and finishing in P10 in China in only his third race. That was a real positive for him. And I think we've seen, although he has been in superior machinery, looking at the skill of his overtakes, going round recently the 70th anniversary, round the outside, his first Grand Prix for Red Bull at Spa, going round the outside of Daniel Ricciardo, taking Perez on the Kemmel Straight. The actual skill of overtaking is there, but then he's also a guy that gets knocked down a little bit on this element, because sometimes I do feel he just puts his car in vulnerable positions with his overtakes, like Suzuka on Lando Norris, where he just basically used Lando as a brake to do it. The Hungary GP just, broke late and jumped on Grosjean and put his front wing in, damage there. Lewis Hamilton, I think I want to see him go for those type of moves. He just didn't quite nail it. He struggled to just execute that one perfectly. He just didn't allow enough room or he could have gone a little bit wider just to make that overtake stick for me. And then obviously the Kevin Magnussen recently going for a gap. But I think that is more, we've seen those overtakes when there's been the pressure on Alex. When the pressure is off and just skill-wise, he does seem like he has the attributes to be a good overtaker. Admittedly, though, I would say raw at the moment because there's a mixture of good overtakes and also overtakes where you go, just be patient.
Yeah.
In there. And
just needs a little bit of patience sometimes.
And again, sometimes he's probably struggled a little bit with overtaking guys within the race that he needs to. But I would say on this one, in terms of a skill set, Alexander Albon is the better overtake between him and Lance Stroll.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. Lance has all on the first lap, but you don't really see any big moves from him consistently through races, where Albon normally consistently, after every race, he normally puts himself in a situation where he needs to make lots of overtakes, but he gets them done. So yeah, give that one to Albon.
Absolutely. And now we move on to defending. So how would you rate Lance Stroll's defending, Stephen?
Lance Stroll's defending? Bit of a tricky one, really. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Defensive drives from Lance Stroll.
I think we've had a couple of examples this year. Like obviously Bottas, he held off for the early stages in a far superior Mercedes. Was good there. Actually, in Hungary, in Hungary, he kind of held Bottas back. Again, another difficult.
It's Bottas on a circuit you can't overtake.
Ricciardo in Styria. Or was it? It might have been
Ricciardo
first
in Styria. Was he getting caught behind Ricciardo?
Yeah, true. In terms of that,
I don't think he never has to really defend. He's very good at controlling his race pace when he's in free air. So he's never really. I've never seen him in a position this season where he's had to defend. You said the two Bottas ones, but it's like inevitable that Bottas overtakes.
Yeah, but I would say I actually think this is one of his strengths in terms of maintaining position. He's very good at positioning his car to make it difficult. I think Lance Stroll is a difficult driver to overtake, which I would say by that element, even if there's like a superior difference in cars or they might get past eventually, I would still say he
does the right things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for Alex, again, probably, thinking off the top of my mind, he's I wouldn't really know because it's a difficult one to say. He had half a season in Toro Rosso, and I don't know if he was necessarily difficult to overtake. All I can remember is Gasly when he was under pressure in Germany, just running into the back of Albon and taking out his front wing and doing that. But I don't think that was good defending by Albon. He just stuck his car in the middle of the road and Gasly decided to not realise how much steering he needed to get past an F1 car. But yeah, it's difficult because, and in this season, he hasn't been in a position where...
He's been the hunter, not the hunted.
Yeah.
So...
It's difficult there. So I don't think we've really seen an opportunity. I suppose against Perez at the Styria Grand Prix when Perez went from 17th and almost caught Albon in 4th.
Yeah.
He, for whatever reason...
But then equally he left the door open for Checo to overtake.
Yeah, and again, left the door open in Brazil. That was still... That's not a criticism of Albon through there, but, just being aware of him, I'm not expecting him to overtake there. But if he just kind of put his car down the middle of the road and would have made the corner still easy on that front, it wouldn't have invited a gap for Lewis to maybe necessarily go for, although the fault is still all on Lewis Hamilton for that instant for me.
Yeah. 100%.
So, yeah,
I feel like this is a draw.
I would say it's a draw because I don't think maybe we've got enough information to really see a clear winner either way.
Yeah. I don't think neither of them have really been hunted for a position before. So, yeah.
In terms of that. And now we probably move on to their teammates. And obviously this is quite a good one to compare themselves against because both in the past 2 seasons have been against experienced teammates. So obviously Lance has been against Sergio Perez, one of the most experienced drivers on the grid and, one of the best drivers in the midfield. And Albon has been against Daniel Kvyat for half season and Max Verstappen, one of the best talents on the Formula 1 grid. So, for Lance, how do you rate him against his teammate?
His 2020 is looking very good against Checo. I think he is ahead of Checo in the championship. Obviously, Checo's had those 2 races out. But he beat Checo in...
Hungary?
No, he didn't beat him in Austria. Beat him in Hungary.
And he beat him in Spain.
And he's out-qualified him in Hungary and Spain. Wait, no, he didn't out-qualify him in Spain. He out-qualified him in one of the first races, didn't he?
Yes, Styria, because they were in the wet.
Wet, there we go. Lance in the wet. So yeah, he's had a very good 2020 season. On par and even better than Checo at times this season. But obviously you mentioned earlier that last year he didn't really get the upper hand on Checo at all. Really, he was definitely the second team driver and Checo was doing what he could. And then, but at his Williams days... trying to think. He did all right, yeah.
He beat Sergio
Sorokin.
And he lost to Massa.
Yeah. That was Massa's... Was that Massa's last year?
I think it was, yeah.
So, yeah. It's a tricky one. It is a tricky one. I feel like this year, Lance is coming of age, but previous years, I don't think he's ever been convincingly first-team driver. Obviously, he's lost 2 of those years, beat Sorokin, but... still, that wasn't an incredible...
No, I think it was like 5 points between them in a struggling Williams anyway.
So, yeah. Again, pre-2020, not great, but, 2020 has shown he can battle for that first team seat.
Yeah.
First in the team. Yeah.
I think Alex Albon... Daniel Kvyat was definitely a guy that he should have been looking to dominate. Had a year out the sport as he'd been Ferrari's test driver, but obviously experienced, so he would have been a good test on merit. And actually, it wasn't too bad between them. And I think obviously Daniel Kvyat's podium would have made the point gap bigger than maybe it should have been. And I think he was respectable against Daniel Kvyat and he was finding his feet and he was learning within Formula 1. And then obviously he came against Max Verstappen and he did better than last year. The second half of the 2019 season, he did a decent job considering it was his rookie year and he's he's against one of the best guys on the grid and he'd been in Formula 1 a long time and Red Bull is kind of very Max focused. So he was never really, and I don't think anyone ever expected Alex to match Max. And he beat him on 2 occasions, bar those 2 occasions being Max started from the back or I think received a penalty or something that forced him further back down the grid. In 2020, I would say he hasn't been good enough. You allow the allowance of the 6 months, but he had an entire pre-season with Red Bull. He's had that year under his belt. He should be looking to kick and improve. And I would say that these have been his worst 6 races of his Formula 1 career compared to his first half of this season. Last year, comparative to think where you're kind of expecting him to be going. You're expecting to see development of a driver and he isn't really doing that. And look, he's never going to be able to beat. Not he's never going to be able to beat Max Verstappen, but at this stage of his career, it would be unrealistic to think that he could be challenging Max Verstappen. But in terms of pace-wise and everything, he probably does need to be a little
you
closer.
want to see him dominate that P4 spot a bit more. He doesn't need a podium to be having a great season, but if he just consistently gets P4 or even P5, but he currently is struggling to really put a stamp on that spot at the moment.
I mean, with 6 races into the 2020 season, you would say Lance is winning this one. But I'd say you've got to bear in mind that this is Lance's 4th season. It's the start of Albon's 2nd season. And so I think that levels it out to probably a draw on this one as well, in terms of how they've compared to their experienced teammates.
Yeah.
In terms of that. We now move on to the last category before giving our conclusions, and that is dealing with pressure. Now, both drivers are under extreme pressures for different reasons. Lance, because he has financial backing from his dad, although quite a lot of the grid have financial backing, or at least, are supported financially in quite a strong way. Lance's is the one that is more evident and used against him.
Yeah, he's got the only dad who's bought an F1 team for him.
Which puts a huge amount of pressure on him. And Alex Albon has the pressure of being in the 2nd best car in the grid, and that his performances every week are in the spotlight. So therefore, he needs to perform. He can't afford to have a bad week, because then it gets noted, then the pressure builds and goes from there. So how would you say that Lance deals with that pressure?
From the outside, he looks like he deals with it very well. He's kind of the public opinion of Lance, and I feel especially this year, with all the rumours of Checo getting the boot over Lance to let Sebastian join, he's got to be feeling it. I know his dad owns the team, and you're going to say, oh, he's stress-free, he can just go out, drive every week. But Lance, I think it's fair to say, is one of the most disliked figures on the grid. And I think the Drive to Survive series as well on Netflix didn't do him any favours. I think he's got a lot of haters compared to everyone else on the grid. Having to have that in the back of your mind in every race, knowing if you make a mistake or have a bad day, they're going to be on your back all over social media. It's got to be tough, but he just somehow manages to still, especially this year, put in very good performances. And yeah, it just, from the outside, looks very solid. And then even when he's been in very strong positions, like in Baku, when he had podium, kept his cool, got the podium. I think last year in Germany, was he one of the first ones to come on to slicks?
He was, and was running in a podium position for a while, but that racing point obviously wasn't at level.
Yeah, just missed out. But yeah, he on the outside seems to deal with the external pressure very well, even though there is a lot on him due to public opinion mainly.
Yeah, and he just he gets on with his job. Alex Albon, on the other hand, initially I would say that he coped with pressure well, but he was always going to have that buffer, that it was when things go right, and they went right at the start of his Red Bull career, didn't they? And, you looked at his performances and what Gasly was doing, everyone was like, well, what a fresh air, we'll give Albon this, there. Then obviously it came with the Brazil podium, or chance that escaped from running that position where, unfairly, Lewis punted him out the race and he would have got a podium there. But that was because you can also say fortune favours you one way. One, you have a safety car that allows you to catch up with everyone that you wouldn't have been close enough to be fighting for that position anyway. And then 2, you also are unlucky because Hamilton has made a poor decision to take you out of the Grand Prix. But it's the way that he's dealt with that since, in terms of he seemed hurt from it, almost like it was a personal vendetta. He seems to, in interviews, take things very personally. And Albon is, one of the key things we often say on the channel. He's a lovely person. You know, he seems one of the nicest guys genuinely on the grid.
I think it's like they're first to Stroll, whereas Stroll's one of the most hated. Albon's one of the most liked, I think, on the grid.
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone wants to see him do well. And, you know, Red Bull are being so positive about him. They're taking all the pressure off. They're saying they're happy with his performances. Literally, there is no pressure on him. But yet he seems to be struggling with it more than Stroll, I would say. And, you know, he has the incident with Austria. You know, I'd say a driver who deals with that, you know, I'd say example of Lance in Monza last year, was driving a fantastic race, really good around Monza, when Vettel came onto the track and forced him to go wide and go from there. And he still had a good end to the season there and had unlucky things. But, you know, he seems to, Lance, take it on the chin and go, heck, that's racing, and kind of, you know, gets his head down and gets on with it. Where Albon, it almost seems to scar him in terms of the memories there of the performance, and then it took him a couple of weeks to get over, you know, that Hamilton incident, getting knocked out of Q2, or I think he had a crash. Was it in Hungary? Was it the free practice in Hungary that he had a crash, or was it Silverstone?
Yeah.
Which then affected him for the weekend, going into that qualifying performance. And, you know, he just seems to, even recently, just coming out and saying, I don't know how to go faster. Like, it's not, he doesn't say things that fill you with confidence that he can turn things around. Where I look at Lance and I go, he doesn't care what anyone thinks.
Yeah.
He's just there to drive. And he's, despite it, you know, he's taken this opportunity. It's the best car he's been in his career. And he's going, you know what? Bam, now is my chance to show people what I can do. And you have to say, early signs in 2020 are very good. Where Albon's second best car on the grid, he isn't setting the world alight or saying, wow, Red Bull made the right decision in picking me.
Yeah.
Conclusions from there. So, Stephen, who would you say is the winner out of this driver rivalry? Who do you think is better? Lance Stroll or Alex Albon?
Lance Stroll.
Okay, that was quick. Do you want to expand on that?
Lance Stroll. Well, I don't think you can argue it at the moment. From what we've seen, obviously Lance has had 4 years in the sport and he's only just coming into his own. If we were doing this in 2019, you know, it'd be a lot closer, and you may be saying, oh, Albon, he's showing that he's better than Stroll. But 2020's been the real turning point for Lance, I think. With his qualifying now coming into the game, his solid drives on the Sunday still, he's looking great. But Albon, second year, I just think at the moment he's still developing, and he's developing in one of the most pressurised seats on the grid. Yeah, and only time will tell if he can continue to develop to one of the top drivers on the grid.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's probably a fair assessment of it. And I think, you know, this is a difficult one because they are at different stages of careers, and Lance is a little bit further down the line. So realistically, this shouldn't really probably have been a debate. But I suppose because they're in two top cars on the grid, two young talents, Lance is still 2 years younger than Albon. So I would say by having more experience in the junior series and being a more experienced campaigner there, I would have expected Alex to have more refined skills coming up, where Lance Stroll has had to do all his learning like Max Verstappen in the main spotlight. Formula One, every, you know, mistake is scrutinised. You know, your performance is in the main public eye. That is what mainly people tune into, where the lower junior categories, the pressure's off. You can learn your skills, learn how to be a good overtaker, get your qualifying speeds up or whatever.
But,
you know.
Yeah, if you make a mistake in the junior series, no one really takes notice.
No, they might make a notice, you know, a little bit more as it's now, as it's obviously improving, but especially the time Alex Albon was competing in it, I don't think it was a very high-pressured environment. And so they're both up against difficult scenarios because Lance Stroll went into a team Racing Point. Checo's been there since 2014. The team love him. He's also helped keep that team afloat with the money that he's in. There is a massive loyalty to Checo within that team. The Racing Point, because of the financial woes with the end of Force India, struggled, it wasn't that competitive a car. And even Checo struggled in that first half of the season. But Lance, actually, I believe at the first half of the season, was leading Checo in terms of the teammate head-to-head in points. Yes, it was massively skewed by that 4th place finish in Germany. But heck, the opportunity came and Lance Stroll took that opportunity where the car improved, his performance has improved, and he's now I've got a good car and I'm going to make the most of this opportunity, where Alex has got a good car, but he's still learning. He's a couple of years down that development, but he's older. And I think that also has to come into play a little bit, that F1's a little bit forgiving. The older you get, the less attractive an option you become in Formula 1, especially as there's such a focus of youth. So the hurry up on Albon is a little bit more as well. But yeah, I would say that Lance Stroll at this stage is the better driver, and I think is the more complete driver as things stands. Albon has the raw skills that you would say should probably mean that he's the better driver, but he hasn't naturally proved that consistently against guys that he should be beating. Like, you're not necessarily impressed too much by a Red Bull overtaking a Renault, so to say. But I think it's an interesting comparison, and it's going to be fascinating to see who comes out on top. They're too polarising, like you said. Lance, probably one of the most hated drivers on the grid, but Alex Albon, one of the most likes. But where are they talent-wise on the grid? Certainly an interesting one for there. But we've both said Lance Stroll, but it's now over to you guys. Who's better, Stroll or Albon? Let us know down in the comments below. We'll be very interested to hear your thoughts on it. And if you're new around here or haven't done so already, I said it at the start of the video, but what can they do, Stephen?
They can like, subscribe and ding that bell.
He's going for world records of how quickly he can say that.
I nearly fluffed the subscribe there.
Yeah.
But I think I just got it in.
I think it's a higher pitch every time it gets faster. It's like,
it helps.
Oh, crazy! But yeah, no, this been good debate. I like that one. That was a good Driver Rivalries in terms of that. And I hope you've enjoyed it. Let us know if you've enjoyed it by liking and subscribing. But anyway, that's it from me and Stephen today. We hope you enjoy the content today, and obviously coming up over this week break between races. And yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you in the next video, guys. So for now, you F1 fans, keep racing!